Welcome to the Simplified Dentistry podcast. Join us as we discuss clinical, operational, and financial aspects of your practice, help you enjoy life, and dare to simplify dentistry.
Welcome back to the Simplified Dentistry podcast. I'm Dr. Mustafa Shakan, along with my co-host, Dr. Richard Offit. We want to welcome today's guest, Dr. Sunny Pahouja. Dr. Pahouja is a graduate of the Ohio State University and is a practicing dentist in Cincinnati, Ohio. He is the owner and founder of the Dental Investment Group, a Facebook community of 20,000 members that has a goal of discussing investment ideas. We'd like to thank our sponsor, Kettenbach USA. From restorative to preventative to TMJ and world-class impression material, Kettenbach Dental offers award-winning German manufacturing materials designed to innovate and simplify existing dental practices. Visit KettenbachUSA.com for a risk-free trial. Tell us a little bit about you, kind of your background, where you came from, and what's going on a little bit.
Yeah, so I'm a full-time practicing dentist. I've been practicing for 13 years now. I graduated from Ohio State, went there for undergrad, and went there for dental school. I guess I should call it the Ohio State University.
That's
We
right,
don't
the
emphasize
Ohio State.
on the. It's a big deal. So it is the Ohio State University.
Because there's another Ohio State University, I guess.
Well, there's Ohio U over there, right?
Right, there is Ohio University. That's the big party school, but I think Ohio State's not too far behind in partying. So, but yeah, I guess we just got beat by Michigan again. So I hate to say that on this podcast, but it is true. Maybe next year, who knows, right?
Yeah, the crazy thing is Ohio State is 10-2, and people started talking about firing Ryan Day, and I was like, Ryan Day is 10-2, number 3 in the country or whatever, and you're talking about firing him?
What were the first words that Belichick said at Carolina the other day?
Yeah.
What did he say? Beat Duke.
Yeah, he said his
Right?
first words as a kid were beat Duke.
Beat Duke, is when his first words. Well, at Ohio State, man, you got to beat Michigan.
Yeah, it's the game. It's the game.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the only one that matters. And what's sad is you could win a national championship this year, but at the end of the day, it's going to be you won a national championship in a year while you lost to Michigan.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Right. No. You're 100% right. Growing up in Ohio, it was just such a big deal. And then you look at Michigan. Hell, they're a 500 team. Now, I have no problem against Michiganders, but the fact of it is that they're a 500 team, but they beat Ohio State. The Ohio State.
Yeah. So I grew up in Columbus and decided I wanted to buy a practice. So I moved out to Chicago actually for about a year and change, worked in Dayton for a couple of years, and then bought my practice here in Cincinnati. So I've been here for 10 years, ever since I've owned my practice. Actually, the 10-year anniversary is coming up in just a couple of weeks here. So it's kind of surreal to see, the whole concept of owning a practice and really developing it into what you want it to be and shaping your employees to do what your visions are. So it's been a wild ride, because I think one of the things we talk a lot about in the group is, ownership is great, but it comes with its own set of headaches and that kind of stuff. There's a lot at stake. There's a lot of, nights where you just feel like, man, I don't feel easy about what I'm doing, but you keep pushing yourself and making sure that you keep growing your practice and keep becoming a better clinician, becoming a better business person. But we'll talk about that later. So really my goal was, when I first bought that practice back in 2015, I was looking for a community to be able to talk about investing. I was looking for a community that can talk about the finance of the practice management, how to become a better leader, how to become a better boss, how to become a better clinician. And there were some groups out there that would discuss a lot of that stuff, but then I was like, there really isn't one that focuses on investing. So I knew a few doctors, and I said, okay, I feel like Facebook groups are a growing thing right now. And this is back in 2017. So I decided that I'll open one up and we'll call it Dental Investment Group. So open this group, add a few hundred people that I knew, and from there on, it slowly but surely grew. And long story short, to date today, there's over 20,000 doctors in the group, and it's just grown
It's
to
crazy.
become such a wonderful community of doctors that really, try to look out for each other, try to give advice, and have fun at the same time. There's so much that goes on, and I think what the craziest part about some of that is that whenever you're talking about money, when you're talking about investing, politics end up playing such a role. So I
Sure.
have to walk a fine line, what kind of content you allow, what kind of content you don't allow, and really try to make sure that the group stays as productive as possible, but at the same time giving people the right to voice their opinions and really be who they are, essentially.
Yeah, and I think that makes a lot of sense. Funny that you did talk about kind of the politics aspect of it. There was fluoridation is obviously an issue right now, and we had a topic kind of on fluoridation. My older brother has been in municipal law for forever, and he's a part of our group, and he kind of put something out there, and he was like, well, this county kind of removed it because of the conservative city council and this and us, and somebody said something there, or we're trying to not have politics, and I jumped in there. I said, look, you're absolutely right. What our goal is objective information presentation. We don't need to call city councils conservative, we don't need to call them liberal, we just need to kind of present the information, and I think that's kind of what we want, and I think that's what you guys want as well.
You said something that I know this may not be what we're supposed to talk about this morning, but I thought you said something that's really important where you didn't reference it quite this way, but you talked about the culture of your staff and the culture of your office and how it fits and feels and getting everybody on the same page. And I think there's been some great conversations on your Facebook group about that, about the culture of building that out with your staff. Maybe I never did that, and that's why we worked
That's right.
420 days a year.
That's right.
But it was, it all seemed to have worked out. But yeah, to talk a little bit about that. I mean, how did you go about building that when you bought your practice in 2017, 15, I'm sorry. And so you go in and you buy a practice, you inherit employees, but there's a new boss, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And the truth is, 10 years later, I really don't have any of those employees that I had 10 years ago. You start coming in as the new doctor, you're going to have some level of complacency with employees. They're used to doing things a certain way. The retiring doc's slowing down. They're doing things at a pace that's more comfortable for the retiring doc. They're doing things that the retiring doc expects them to do, but there's that level of complacency. There's that level of comfort that I'm okay doing what I'm doing because I'm near retirement. I really just got to make sure that I keep
Sure.
these employees as stable as possible. So when I get ready for the sale, you have a staff that's going out, because I mean that's the goodwill of the practice at the end of the day. And so when you come in, as a younger doctor, you're like, look, I do implants, I do a lot of oral surgery, I do endo, and all these procedures that the other doctor's not doing. So you have to kind of figure out how do you really get people on the same page to do more. And the thing is, what's hard about some of this stuff is that a lot of doctors find that when they're inheriting staff from a sale of a practice, they're most of the times they're getting that top dollar. So you don't necessarily have a lot of room to give out raises. You don't
Sure.
necessarily have a lot of room to
Right.
really do a lot with their pay. But then I think what the culture seems to become over the course of the next 1 to 2 years is that, well, I'm working more, but I'm not really getting paid more. And I think, well, I thought of it as an opposite. Well, you were really underutilized before, and I'm just really trying to get to your full potential. And I think as that happens, you really start to figure out who the weak players are, and maybe they're just not the right fit for your practice, and you start to find people that are willing to work, find people that are willing to get trained and be able to do things that you envision for your practice. So as time goes on, you really try to focus on what your goals are, what the goals are of your employees, and try to try to match them up as much as possible. And I think there's always that mentality where a lot of employees are getting paid hourly, and they're used to whether you give them,
It's an hourly
this
mentality.
much work or this
Yeah.
much work. I mean, they're getting paid the same, and you can incentivize them with different things. And one of the things I didn't want to do initially, or even to this date, was, tie everything to a bonus. Like, I look at it this way. If I do the right thing for my patients, there's plenty of dentistry to be done. I don't like tying a bunch of things with numbers and bonus this on if we reach these numbers, that numbers. And there are
Sure.
practices that do that and they thrive on that. That's perfectly fine. And I feel like, what I started doing was something called spontaneous bonuses. So completely unexpected, completely, just a gratitude for doing the right thing. If you're taking care of your patients, if you're doing the right thing, then I want to be able to reward my employees for doing that. And that's something that's worked out pretty well because you start to recognize employees that are stronger, that go above and beyond, and really reward them for doing the right things. And then the weaker players, unfortunately, just don't, survive after a few years, and then you just have to figure out how do you create a team that's going to be all in with your mission. And I
Yeah.
think what's hard is, 5 years into ownership, COVID happened. And all of a sudden now you're like, wait a minute, now there's a lot of movement happening. Employees aren't working. What do you do? And when a lot of that stuff was going on, that's when, I pretty much had that turnover, so you had the stability for these years from 2015 to 2020, and all of a sudden there's this global event happens and no one's working and you're trying to figure out what's going to happen. And I'm dealing with things like everyone else was. My hygienist is not coming back because she's afraid of
Sure.
not being able to make it, all that kind of stuff. So, that's where things change. And then you start to you realize like you're pretty much starting over with a lot of new people. And I think that's the challenging part about being a business owner, being a practice owner, is that no one gives you a guide to say you follow this and you're going to be successful at it. You're basically trying to figure this out every day. You're trying to figure this out, how to do the right thing for your patients, how to do the right thing for your employees, and keep moving that chain forward.
Yeah, so I mean, I think what you're saying is spot on, and schools don't teach you anything like that. They're designed to make you mentally, clinically competent. So let's talk about dental investment group real quick. So kind of a lot of what you're talking about, I would think, kind of falls into what your goal is with dental investment group. Obviously there is a financial component. What is your ideal format for dental investment group? What do you want it to be?
And a follow up then, has that changed over time? In other words, from when
Yeah.
you talked about when you first started, you had some docs, you grew a group, and the goal was to share information. Has that changed over the time? Because you've had enormous success, and as the success has happened, has the kind of the goal morphed a little bit?
Yeah, it's what's funny is that the DIG group can also go in these cyclical times where when the market is on a tear, like it has been back when it was back in 2020, 2021. There was much conversation around trading. There was so much conversation about, what stocks to buy, what do we do with this, and the technical aspect, and this might happen to this stock. And then as the market starts to retract, as the market starts to take a breather, the conversations kind of shift more towards practice management and how do you really preserve the capital that you've accumulated over the years? How do you invest the best possible way? So what's strange is that these conversations are so much around what's happening in the current world right now. Elections just happened, so now there's all this conversation about how a new presidency could affect people's investments over the next 4 5 years or so. What would have happened if the current presidency had stayed in place? So you're seeing all this stuff that there's so much movement. There's a lot of conversation around crypto. What would have happened if maybe Trump wasn't elected, because all these conversations that were happening before the election about what might happen to crypto if
There was a lot of
Democrats are
talk of
elected.
regulation of
Right.
crypto,
There,
Yeah,
heightened
regulation,
regulation. Yeah.
so much.
and now crypto is kind of
Well, it's
Yeah,
going to have
it's
yeah, it's in a golden period right now.
yeah, it's taken off. Bitcoin over 100,000. So it's one of those exciting times where you're excited about the markets, but you're cautiously optimistic just because you feel like things have been on a tear. You're trying to make sure that you take advantage of what's out there, but at the same time find ways to preserve your capital. So what's happened is, it's really kind of like up and down with these conversations about investing. When people are guarded, when the market is in a down phase, people are trying to see what kind of investing makes sense. And then there's a group of people that are like, look, I don't care what happens in the market, whether it's going up, whether it's going down. I'm a DCA investor. I'm gonna basically invest every week, every 2 weeks, every month, no matter what happens. I'm gonna continue to invest every
dollar
month.
cost average. Yeah.
Dollar cost averaging. So that's their goal at the end of the day. There are people that enjoy the trading aspect. There are people that really enjoy talking about some of that stuff, and they're like, look, I'm willing to play the game. I'm willing to, trade. And then there's obviously, we talk about, there are studies out there that show that trading doesn't necessarily, win over dollar cost averaging or so. But, it's to each their own. There are people that have done that have been widely successful in real estate. There are people that have done amazingly well by owning multiple practices, but there are also people that have owned more than one practice, their second practice, and have gone almost bankrupt. So you get
Yep.
this perspective from all kinds of people out there. You learn about yourself by reading some of this stuff. What kind of investor are you? Are you investing in yourself by buying more practices? Are you investing in real estate by leveraging the capital that you've earned from your practice, or are you investing in stocks? So there's all kinds of risks out there, but I think what the cool thing is that a lot of people, a lot of us learn about ourselves by reading all this content out there and trying to figure out, well, where do I fit in with all of this stuff?
Yeah,
Do I want?
I was gonna say, community is interesting to me, and when you're dealing with investing in that, you brought up practices that fail. You almost wish that community were more open and more transparent, and people would talk about the bad things. Nobody ever wants to talk about the bad things. They want to talk about the good
Their
things.
success.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's important for people to kind of look at things and understand you're in the social media world, and social media world tries to paint everything in rose-colored glasses. For our listeners, I think it's worthwhile to check out Sonny's group, Dental Investment Group, on Facebook. We also want our listeners to check out Simplified Dentistry, which we're kind of trying to partner with Sonny and kind of develop the same type of thing. But along the lines of community, you've always wanted to develop community. Where do you see community going? Is Do you see there being lots of different spots where community can be, or where do you see it?
Yeah, I think there's room for all of that. I truly believe that, people that are, focused on the clinical aspect, they are driven more towards those groups, communities that have more clinical content, people that are geared towards, and it can depend from day to day. I mean, I can have a difficult day at work, and I can have a difficult patient. I'm trying to figure out some answers to what might have happened with such and such case. Well, I might go to a different community, different group, and try to post my question there and try to get feedback from doctors over there. Or I could have a day where I just had a tough time with my employees and trying to figure out how do I fix this problem? Then I'm geared more towards my own group, trying to figure out, if doctors can help me try to figure out practice management questions, employee management questions, really HR related type of questions or so. Or you could have this, a day where, the Nasdaq shoots up 300 points and everyone's excited about the markets. Let's talk about some of the hottest stocks out there. What was making a lot of noise? Was it Microsoft? Was it Tesla? Was it Apple? Was it Nvidia? So the nice thing about all these communities, and even like yours, where there's a comprehensive approach to, you can talk about clinical, you can talk about practice management, you can talk about how to deal with CPAs and all that kind of stuff. So, being in your group, I feel like there's that approach where there's room for every community out there, as long as the information that's in there is valuable to doctors. I mean, there's only so much time in a given day. If someone says, look, I'm going to dedicate an hour, 2 hours a day to browse these communities and try to figure out, what matters to me, what is valuable content to me, and really try to see what I can learn today is the goal at the end of the day. I think as in general, we get spoiled with these social media. I mean, there's so much out there, right? I mean, there's
Sure.
Instagram, there's TikTok, there's Facebook groups, and so all this stuff that's out there, you're trying to really figure out how do you have the best content out there? How do you get people to really help each other out as much as possible and really be there for each other? I mean, I feel like I've met so many wonderful doctors from not just my group, but also a bunch of different groups that really become your friends over the course of many years, and people that are there for you, people that you can call, text, and really have a conversation, meaningful conversation about your practice, about your life, I mean, there's people that are life coaches that have offered me so much help over the years. There are people that are, practice management gurus. I mean, there are doctors that own multiple practices, to talk to them about how they scale their practices. So there's all these things that people are doing to really grow and make sure that they can provide enough value to the doctors that they're talking to and really be there for each other.
Yeah, it's amazing the amount of things that you can kind of pick up. I learn something every day by being on these podcasts. There are tidbits that I pick up. There are tidbits that you pick up from the Facebook communities. 1.8 billion people in the country are part of a Facebook group.
Sonny, you said something to the point that you and Dr. Shakan just said, is that, I find myself, so I read your posts, and I find myself saying, you kind of do a little introspective review of yourself, and you go, well, do I agree with that, or do I not agree with that? Or
Yeah.
is that how I, or is that how I would play that game? Or if I were dealt the same hand, would I play it that way? Would I not? Right. And I think that's the thing that has been most amazing to me about the whole podcast world.
Yeah.
One thing. And then the second thing is, dentistry can be kind of a lonesome business. You're out there by yourself. You're in your office. I practiced by myself for many, many years before I had other doctors. And what I think that these communities do is they provide a voice to those individual doctors. Like you're saying, you had a question about something, you went on another site, you started a conversation to try to find solution to what your question was, right? And I think that that's just amazing. And I think in your group it's very dynamic to the point you're saying. It almost keeps pace with current trends, right? And I hadn't thought about it that way until you brought it up today. Is that it keeps pace with what's going on in the world around it, right?
Yeah.
And one thing I think of from what you were talking about too, with things that are progressing, what people post, you ever track, somebody comes out today and says, I'd buy Microsoft. You ever track how those recommendations go? Because obviously you're getting a recommendation from everybody.
Right. Yeah. So it's funny you say that because we do go back, just referencing posts that might have happened a year, 2 years ago, and somebody just brought up a stock that they had talked about a year ago, and I think it's up over 100% in that 12-month period. So obviously people will talk about different stocks that are out there. I mean, there are some that have gone bankrupt, and there are some that have done extremely well. So, at the end of the day, people discuss these things as a way to figure out, like, is this an investment that I believe in? And if I do, then I'm going to talk about this in a group, and I'm going to talk about it with my peers to see what their opinion is on some of these things. So, I mean, I've looked at some stocks that I'm thinking about investing, and then you post about it, and then there are people that will put valid, good information, good content out there that on the no behind, like, why we shouldn't invest in certain stock, right? Because it's easy to say yes to investing in something, but my goal is to connect with people that might say, no, don't invest in it for this, or that reason. Now,
Yeah.
I mean, there can be a lot of noise out there. Obviously, they could be wrong. I could be wrong. But the easy answer is always yes.
Yeah.
Here's a proposition on for a stock for an investment, invest in some of this stuff. But then you always want those critics that might say no and try to understand the why behind it. Because there's sometimes when your mind is biased because you are trying to convince yourself that you should invest in something, you're going to end up doing it. But when you talk to other people that might have a different opinion and try to understand the why behind it, you might say, you know what, this makes sense. Maybe this company doesn't have the growth prospects as you thought it would. Maybe I shouldn't invest in it, or maybe I need to research more before I invest in this company. And that's saved a lot of people a lot of money.
Do you ever hit yourself over the head? There's some things I see on your group where somebody be like, oh, the market went up this much and this stock went up this much.
Yeah.
And they post their portfolio and their portfolio is $27 million. And it's like, dude, do you really have $27 million? I mean, or did you just make this shit up? I mean, or somebody that I thought saw one thing one day, guy had been out of school for a year and posted a $25 million house on Lake Michigan. I've just saved real well. I mean, what do you just laugh at that, or what, or do you think any of that is legitimate?
Yeah, so I mean, I know here and there some of the posts are just made as a joke. But some of these doctors, I mean, you'd be surprised. I mean, some of this, what they've saved, what they've done, is legit. I mean, I've had these conversations with the NVIDIA doctor that
Sure,
said
yeah.
he decided he was going to buy NVIDIA, I think 10 years ago, and he never looked back. He never sold a single share. He did what he had to do, and it's worth over $25 million now. So it's just one of those things where it he didn't invest. I think he invested maybe I think five or $600,000 in it, but the growth that NVIDIA has had in the last 10 years has been astronomical. So yeah, there are things like that exist. I mean, there are people, I'm sure they're exaggerating the what they have and whatnot, but there are some legit doctors out there, I mean, that have done extremely well. And I think the ones that make the least noise out there are usually the ones that have
That are
done
legitimate. Yeah.
well. Yeah, that have done well, and they'll talk about it, but they don't, go out there and post
I can tell
every.
you the minute my portfolio is $25 million, first thing that thing's going into a bond fund and I am never cutting on another tooth again. Yeah.
Teeth days are over, right?
That's right.
Yeah. Well, Sonny, tell me this. So you've been tremendously successful with DIG. I don't know if when you first started, if you'd have thought you'd ever have, 20,000 people, hanging on to what you're saying. And so where to now? Where does it go next? Where do you see it going?
Yeah, so one of the things I started doing a few years ago was connecting with companies that were willing to work with the group. Obviously, back in the day, I mean, you're just trying to enjoy, you're just trying to figure out what kind of doctors exist out there, how are they running their practices, how are they running their lives. I mean, a lot of doctors are solo practitioners in that group.
I see what you guys do. I see what we're trying to do. I see what other groups do. Building community is important. I kind of see, people ask us all the time, what's the end game? And I was like, we don't have an end game. We're just
Yeah.
we're trying to contribute to the profession. We're trying to, it's pretty altruistic, except it burns a hole in Rick and I's pocket right now and our other partner. But we just want to bring community because we think community is missing in the profession and bring good community. If somebody said, well, what is your goal? I was like, my short-term goal is, I want to get with somebody like Sonny. I want to get with somebody like David Yang. I want to get with some of these guys. And I think we can collectively put together a meeting, where we're kind of reaching, we have different pools of people we're reaching and kind of all come together and have, content that's kind of provided by, the guys that are members of our group, there are some really, really accomplished people that are members of our group. And then there's also, people will actually listen to Rick occasionally. They'll listen to you a little bit.
Not at my house nor my practices.
Right.
That's what is it? 50 miles from here, I'm a damn rock star.
That's right.
But right here, not so much.
And I think our listeners and I think our community would like that. And it's different than it's the Dental Town meeting or this thing. I think it would be a nice thing to do if we could ever figure out how to do it.
Yeah. Hey, talking about Rick, I have to say that my very first, and you probably don't even know this, Rick, but my very first interaction with you, so I do listen, was on Dental Town with you. I think this was like back in 2014, 2015. And yeah, so Rick, people do listen to you.
Yeah. Well, thank you for remembering. I'm going to pass that on to my family.
I try not to.
Yeah, I'm going to pass that on to family and friends. I don't have employees anymore, so but I will pass that on to people that don't. But thank you very much, though, Sonny. That's very kind.
So, Sonny, kind of to wrap up, we always like to, our mantra in this whole thing is, let's dare to make dentistry simple. Kind of would your takeaway to our audience be? Is there something that, you would say that kind of simplifies dentistry or kind of achieves the mission that you're looking at?
Yeah, so I think the way I look at things is dentistry, you look at the clinical aspect, you look at the running your practice aspect. I mean, all in, it's hard. I mean, there's a lot of moving parts. You're trying to be a good clinician, you're trying to be a good businessman, you're trying to take care of your family, you're trying to take care of your employees. So there's so many moving parts, and I think there is some real concern about the stress levels out there when it comes to running your practice when you being a dentist. There's obviously some unfortunate things that have happened in our community where people, and this is just such a hard conversation because people have taken their lives because of the stress that comes with being a dentist. And I think we need to have more and more conversations. We need to really be there for each other as much as possible. And the way I look at it is, the way I try to simplify it is that, look, you can only control so much. There are certain things that you can control. There are certain things you can't control. Running a practice is a completely separate beast than running the clinical aspect of your day.
Sure.
So when you're focused on some of that stuff, you really got to make sure that you're trying to not cloud your judgment to the point where you just get so frustrated that you're not paying attention to what's in front of you. So pay attention to what's in front of you. Try to really make sure that what matters at that moment in time is what you're focused on. And I think reaching out to people, doing the right thing. And if there are doctors that are like, look, I'm so frustrated, I'm so defeated working 5 days a week. Maybe it's not all about the money. Maybe it should be more about your mental health. It should be more about finding that balance. But at the end of the day, when somebody is on their deathbed, nobody's saying like, hey, I worked so hard, I have all this money, because you hope that you had those good relationships. You hope that you lived a fulfilled life that really gets you to think about that you're happy with what you did, and not feel that it was a hard life. And I think part of that is just a lot of dentists are spread so thin that they need to figure out how to take time out for themselves and really just take care of their bodies, take care of their mental health, and really just focus on some of that stuff as opposed to just focusing on their practices alone. Because I think just about every doctor will say, all I do is work. Yeah. I'm one of those, right? But then, and it's easier said than done because you feel like you got to be there for your family, you got to be there for your patients, but you really have to take care of yourself first before you can take care of others.
Yeah, I've modified my life kind of along those things. My wife, kids, she goes, dentistry is the world's greatest part-time job. And I was like, come on now. But
That's
yeah,
right. Give me a little credit.
I was like, we do a lot, but I think you're right. You just have to achieve balance and you have to achieve success. And somebody said one time, are you going to miss that one crown that you did that day, or are you going to miss going to Pebble Beach to play golf? You're going to miss
watching your daughter play a basketball game.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Those are the things that I think are valuable.
Yeah, and that's so true because you're going to remember those stories no one's gonna remember, oh yeah, you stayed extra to do that extra crown or
Yeah,
whatever. Yes, there are times where you're like, look, my patient's in pain. I'm gonna stay and take care of that. But I
sure.
know
You provide a
the
service.
old me would have been like, oh, let me work through lunch, and somebody came in, and I have an opportunity to do, this extraction and or a crown. Let me do that. Now, if somebody's not in pain, I'm gonna tell them like, hey, we'll get you back in as soon as possible
Sure.
and take care of this for you. I don't want to give up my lunch hour anymore. I want to try to relax and just clean my headspace and really just get ready for the second half of the day. So yeah, it's crazy how things change as you get older, but then sometimes you wish that you had realized some of those things early on, so you don't look back at that, what you did for the
Definitely.
last 10 years. So.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much for joining us today. We really enjoyed having you here. Look forward to talking a little bit more with you, kind of in the future, having you on again, and love to kind of interact with our different groups because I think it's valuable. You guys present something that we don't have. We present some aspects that you don't have, and I think there's a good congruence of information in there. So
Yeah.
thank you very much for taking the time, Sonny.
Doctor, thank you so much. Enjoyed talking again.
Yeah, thank you
And
both.
thank you
You
for your
guys,
kind remarks about our first meeting. I appreciate it.
yeah, no, thank you both. You guys have a great group. I enjoy it. I want more people to know about it. So yeah, thank you for doing this.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Sonny.
Take care, Sonny.
Thank you.